Right, I have to have a quick word on the carbon emission scheme that Storm has said is completely brilliant for the UK because it isn't. First of all, almost no one knows what it actually is. And of course, Starmer is banking on your ignorance. So let's just fix that. Picture this, right? The government gives you a ration book each winter and you're allowed to heat your home for 100 hours, no more. But your neighbour lives in a mansion and they blast out their heating 24 hours a day and they run out of heating after a week. And you're cold and you haven't got much money, so they buy your credits from you. Yeah? So you're still cold, but they, of course, can carry on with their heating. It's exactly the same with carbon trading. It doesn't actually stop any emissions, you know. It just lets the biggest polluters of CO2 buy their way out of it, whilst all other businesses have to cut back. Sounds equitable. Anyway, it's not the pollution you think it is. It's just the big bad CO2. You know, the stuff that vegetation needs to breathe. Also, the gas that's released when we burn fossil fuels and we heat homes, power factories, drive cars, live our lives, all of that stuff. Well, governments decided to put a price on it, creating a kind of a stock market where each carbon credit is equal to 1 ton of CO2, and big companies get a set number of credits each year. If they emit less CO2 than their allowance, then they sell their spare credits and they make profit. And if they go over their credits, they buy more and then they just burn more. Isn't it brilliant? So the emissions don't actually stop. They just get traded. It's a big game and we're not invited. This whole trade in fresh air, by the way, started back in the 1990s under the Kyoto Protocol, which you might have heard of, another great big scheme, encouraged by economists. Because they saw a way of making profit. And world leaders then came up with this plan to trade these emissions and let countries and companies trade them. And one of the biggest cheerleaders of this scheme was none other than Al Gore. After losing the 2000 US election, he co-founded a carbon trading firm and became the first multi-squillionaire by betting on climate policy. Because he, of course, owned the company that traded in the carbon credits, right? But even when he championed it, the United States refused to sign up because they knew it would punish domestic industry. And they didn't trust this made-up Ponzi scheme anyway. But the EU loved it. And today, the EU runs the largest carbon trading market in the world, worth nearly €1 trillion. Now, some people might call it a Ponzi scheme, because it only works if the price of carbon keeps going up. And when it does, they all make money. Now, after Brexit, the UK left the EU carbon market and we set up our own version. We didn't can it, and we didn't can it because the government made money from it. We just rolled over the same EU system, but we set a lower price per tonne. And last year, the UK government raked in £4.2 billion selling fresh air credits to the industry. And Keir Starmer wants us to go back into the EU scheme, where the price of carbon is almost double what it is here. Why would he want to do that? Well, Labour needs to raise more tax, right? And if we rejoin, the Treasury could rake in nearly £7 billion or more next year, which is nearly double what it was getting. Yeah? And we're just going to align with the EU price and put every business's costs up, which means your costs go up. Now, stay with me. It is jammy. Where does that money go to? You know, it's like it's a net zero thing, right? It must go to special projects. No, it doesn't go into climate innovation. It doesn't go into planting trees. It just goes into general taxation, the same part as VAT and fuel duty, because this isn't about saving the planet. It's about topping up Treasury funds. And Starmer's telling you it will help British businesses avoid the new EU's carbon border tax. I'm not going to get into this here because I'll bore you to death. We'll do it in another video. But trust me, mostly it won't. Let's just be honest here. This isn't about British businesses. It's a sneaky way for Labour to tax consumers without actually telling you. The carbon emission trading scheme doesn't solve emissions. It doesn't lower emissions. It just turns CO2 into currency. It's not net zero. It's net profit, right? Anyway, I had to come out of the garden and let you know because it was giving me heartburn. I can spot a con a mile away.